Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Lit versus Genre. This is Steve,
And this is Jeff.
and we are here finally in
Yes.
Camelin. We made it, Jeff. How are you feeling?
I feel great.
You
I
feel?
feel great. The joy I experience reading these chapters, especially 36, but we'll do 35 first, of course. So we're here. We made it. How do you feel after this journey? You feel the journey that we just went
I think I feel like Matt, where I'm like, why are we here? What has
on?
changed?
Right,
Nothing. And now I really empathize with Matt where he's like, now we're just going to Tarvalon. What's
right, right.
like we were supposed to get here. Everything was gonna get better when we got here, and nothing happened once we got here. And I'm like, I feel you, brother. I feel you.
Right?
Heavy
So, I mean,
shadows darken the undersides of his eyes.
dude's not sleeping. Not sleeping the way he should
He's
be.
not doing well. He's not doing
Is
well,
that
that's for
is that?
sure.
But he's spitting truth during this because yeah, I mean it's super realistic where you're like, oh, I'll just do this thing until I get to this point and then everything will be fine. And you get there and it's like, okay, now I'll just get to this point and then it'll be fine. So yeah, no, I certainly agree with him, especially talking about other possibilities and the conflict that creates. No, loved it, loved it.
All right. I mean, these two chapters, I felt like this was more story time.
Mm.
Like basically these two chapters were entirely story time. And yeah, that's cool if that's what you're into as a reader is world story time. Okay, but here's the story time that I was like,
Yes.
"Oh wait, first of all, what's a sedan chair?"
Oh, that's like, where they've got a chair up on poles and people carry it.
Okay, like Egyptian or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like sometimes, I mean, maybe that's in the glossary, but I feel like there were two moments where I was like, I don't understand, like something feels under described to
Mm.
me, and that was one where I was like, if I could see this a little bit better, maybe I'm just supposed to know what a sedan chair is. All I think when I think of a sedan is just like my little Toyota that I used to have. But
I think that's where it came from,
is that where
right?
it comes from?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you Google sedan chair, what comes up is actually pictures of a sedan car, right? But the very first definition is an enclosed chair for conveying one person carried between horizontal poles, and you
Mm.
get some pictures of that, two people, one in front, one in back, also called a
I
litter.
guess the thing that
Yeah.
confused me was the verb pushing. The pullman pushing along. And I guess that just means they're walking along. But like you hear that verb and you think like
Mm.
that's what they're doing. They're pushing something. And I was like, but what would they
Oh,
be pushing? He
I
just
think it's
means
that
like
they're
going
pushing the
along.
people. Well, I think it's also pushing along and never care for who they shoved aside. So
Well,
I
then
think the
why
idea is
would
they're
you
like
say
pushing the
push and
people.
shove? Why would you say both of those? Why
I,
would
I mean, I
you
hear you.
say
I hear
both?
you. I'm just saying where it's coming from.
All right.
But yeah, but I hear that. I hear that. A woman pushing along. Yeah, especially since sedan chairs haven't been introduced and they are new. I could see Rand spending a little more time talking about them because he hasn't seen them before. Like, does he
Oh,
know what a
true.
sedan
Right,
chair is?
right. This is
Right?
another place where
So
we're maybe jumping out of his head a little bit. Like he
a
knows
little bit, I think. I
what these
think.
are.
Because he probably has he seen a carriage. I mean, we did see the carriages in the other town, I want to say, where they were all painted those particular
Hmm.
colors. But I think the sedan chairs are new. Uh, I was going to say the part that really worked for me for the town introduction was it's real early, but it's all the different sounds and all the words we have in our, English lexicon for those like calves bawled, cattle lowed, geese honked,
Hmm.
chickens clucked,
Hmm.
goats bleated, sheep bayed, people bargain. Like
Hmm.
I feel as if a lot of times we get into the what is it? The visual descriptions without maybe like sound or taste.
Hmm.
And then I feel like that has it. I think I'm hearing a little sounds from you, specific talking out loud
I
about perhaps a lack
liked.
of specificity, right?
Yeah, I mean
But
those, and
but
and
he's
that they
going for
piled
cacophony.
right on top of each other, just all the
Mhm.
like. I,
Well, I
I
think that's
found
what
that
it's supposed to
sentence
do.
kind of funny. Yeah, but like.
Like it's
I,
supposed to create that feeling. right? Of it's piled on.
Yeah. I don't know if it did it for me. I hear what you
Mhm.
said, but it just felt like kind of like comical. I guess it's supposed to be comical. Cows ball, cattle load, geese honked, chicken. It sounds like a children's nursery rhyme thing. Like we're all sitting in a circle in kindergarten, and like we're all going around. What does the fox say? Like it was like really we're just listing them off. I don't know. I didn't dig it that much. I thought it was a little clunky. Um,
Well, I
eh,
think what's neat is we get to see words that we don't normally get to see. Like
mm,
normally it's like cow's mood, right? But lowing is something you do sometimes hear used. Bald is different. Bayed is different. So yeah, there's some classic ones, but notice how those are like more in the middle. So I feel like you've kind of got this old-timey feel with certain descriptions that happen early into more standard ones and then out again. But I mean, I hear you. It doesn't need to be for everybody. But I just think it's written that way purposely to create that sense of this, just medley of noise that he's walking into or they're walking into.
yeah, I actually like the part right before the sedan chairs
Hmm.
better. That felt like more real to me, like I was really in it or seeing it for the first time until I got the sedan chairs, and then I was just confused.
You're like,
But
what is this
yeah,
adventure?
but I liked all this with the different dresses and like the
Hmm.
different
Yeah.
ways people looked. That felt more like okay, I'm taking in the scene than this like
Right.
really comma list of animal noises. I also felt at the beginning I was like, how is he seeing all this city? Like I didn't quite understand like how they're coming at it. Like it seemed like he could see a lot. Like the
Mm.
wall, like going all the way around, and I'm like, well, when you come at it, would you be above looking down somehow to see all this? But I thought no, like in my mind with hedges and a road, it just felt to me like it would just be like flat, like Midwest flat, or like Southwest flat, and you're just like heading towards it. And I didn't feel like you would see as much as Jordan describes you being able to see. But I don't know, like all this stuff, the 50-foot height swept in a great circle, curving north and south, till he wondered how far it must run.
Hmm.
It just
Yeah,
kind
I'm
of
always
sounded like a
looking back at those
bird's eye
parts.
view, which I didn't feel like they would have coming in. But whatever.
I mean, when you go up to those kind of older cities, because I have gotten to go to some of them. I got to go to Dubrovnik, where like Game of Thrones was filmed, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a huge walled city, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you are right from, if you're too close, you're not really going to get to see as much of the curved edges. Of course, you could get a sense of the curve though, just due to where the walls are placed. Um, but yeah, I mean. I think that's a question of, do we want to cheat a little bit to get a better
Mm.
sense of the city and its look, or do we want to stay strictly it's in his head? I mean, to me, I felt like I was still in his head. There wasn't anything that seemed wild for him to see or spot, um, but I would have to, double check it.
Yeah. But I think the main thing to talk about here is
Mhm.
Tom's story time. So we get
Well,
Tom.
real quick. Just talk
Uh
about the
huh.
parts before that. Just super fast. Just that one, him needing to find it. Two, there being something political going on in the city that we don't know what it is, and people just not answering his questions. I felt like that moment that we've talked about, what, like a million chapters ago now, like more than 30 chapters ago, about like people not answering, and I loved it. I loved it. Like
Mm-hmm.
no one was actually telling them where it
Mm-hmm.
was, or just kind of like pointing in vague directions or get away from me because they're so sick of all these people like flooding their city. So I just like that it wasn't just a like, where should I go? And someone immediately pointed them, like they actually had to go around through this big city and find their way. And people like the guy laughing at the choice that they've made because of the name of the inn and stuff like that. And just you feel kind of a little politics under the surface that there's more going on here. And I feel like those, as well as the descriptions we got of the city, are what help make it feel like a city, and larger with more happening. But anyway, story time as we get to Master Gill, all yours.
Well, Tom's clearly not dead, right? I mean, like this guy straight up says it, and like went through that whole rigmarole of where we're like, oh, if you don't see the body,
Mm.
dude's not dead, and we didn't see the body, and now this guy's saying whatever. I believe you saw what, and he even uses the caps. Jeff, go to your book.
No, that can't be right. What
That
is
can't
that?
be right,
What
right?
is this? What is this nonsense or that whatever? You're like, is this some magic word? What is this? I
We
don't
do
trust
get the
anything that's
return.
capitalized.
We do get the return of some capitalized words a little bit later, which I
Oh,
highlighted.
that's amazing because of the capitalized word stuff
But
we've talked about.
he's a harder man to kill than you might believe.
Oh,
And
those
then
movies.
all this backstory that
Mm-hmm.
pervy Tom Maryland, who we know is a perv anyway, was like knocking boots with the queen. And then like he's like, but I have now sworn to hate all Aes Sedai because of my nephew, and that's what ruins his relationship with the queen. And like I'm like, why are we getting all this? There's no way he's dead, because why are we getting so much story time for a character who's dead and gone? I feel fully convinced that Tom is waltzing back into our lives any moment.
I mean, I hear that from like a behind the scenes viewpoint, right? Like from a writer viewpoint, you're like, why would you spend this much time telling me about him? But I do think from a story context, one, the whatever is not capitalized in the book, so that's
Okay,
that's a lie. But
good.
two, um, I believe that the more story purpose immediately serves is right now they would have an out of going to see Elida. It's tricky because I
Hmm.
always read her as Elida in my mind, but now I got to go check like the pronunciation key. But um, because she is Aes Sedai, they were traveling with the Aes Sedai Moraine,
Let's
right?
do it. It's
So it's
important to
like,
be accurate.
right? No, please look it up. Let's make sure we got this right. But that would be the easy next thing for them to do. Yeah, and it's
Hmm.
something they had even pondered doing, which was going to see her. So
Yeah, might
I
even
hear you that it
speed
could
up this whole
feel
book a little bit, maybe.
right, but why would we do that, Steve? Why? Yeah, Elida. Yes.
Elida,
Haha.
you were
That's right.
right.
So yeah,
Justified.
Elida. Feels so good. But when when that's kind of addressed here, they're given a reason not to do that, right?
Hmm.
Now it could be argued, how good is that reason? Does that create narrative problems? But I think it helps justify why this story would happen because
There
they
could
need
be
a good
other
reason not to do
reasons,
that.
though.
There could.
You could come up with 100 different reasons besides Tom's story time. There's like no doubt in my mind, no doubt. I mean, I've made predictions before and been wildly off base before, but like,
He's calling it.
I'm calling it.
No, I'm not saying one way or the other that. I'm just saying that I think serves a dual purpose, which I like. Um, and it helps us understand his motivation more kind of after the fact. Speaking of motivations, I really liked how much we see Matt questioning this Master Gills, like why
Yeah,
would
thank
Master Gill help
goodness
us and
these
everything.
kids are questioning
Hmm.
stuff,
Yeah.
because like I questioned it too immediately when he's like, "Oh, this guy, he has
Hmm.
this flute." And he's like, "Where'd you get that flute?" And he's like, "Oh, he gave it to me." And he's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure." I'm like, wait, you wouldn't think like these people stole your boy's flute? Um, but he's like, "I like the look of you kids. You kids, I like how you look." And I'm like, "Wait, what?
Well, I think
What?"
there's an important moment where Rand is just like very straight up and honest, where about the flute and everything. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
I think like a thief or a murderer might have tried to lie. So I think that was something that affected Guild. But Matt does still totally question, like, why would this dude be totally cool to help us,
Yeah.
putting himself in danger? And I feel like we're seeing them, grow from these, kids that were very sheltered, didn't know what was going on, maybe just trusted others for the most part, right? And now, especially Matt, is getting way more paranoid and he's becoming more someone who could fit into a big city basically.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right on. Yeah, wait, I didn't have that highlighted where
mhm.
Matt says something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
no, he's yeah, where
oh,
is
maybe it's at
I
the
mean, we
beginning of
both
the
know
next
it
chapter or
obviously.
something. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
I think it might be in the next chapter. I
yeah.
was just saying because we were just talking about that stuff.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Sometimes these sayings, this sentence like threw me for such a loop. The
Yeah.
lights and things don't go so bad that changes. Even reading it now, like I can like intellectually understand.
Yeah.
He hopes things don't go so bad that
Right.
the guards still standing for the queen
Yeah.
changes and they don't still stand for the queen. But like that is just a wreckage of a sentence right there, because the lights
Hmm.
send is just a
Right.
saying. Maybe
Right.
even if there's like a comma between the light send and things, like give me something, Robert.
That
Like
would be
that
like more
sentence
direct
was like
address.
just a the lights send things don't go so bad that changes. I'm just putting this on a t-shirt and being like,
I mean,
I'm
it
the
should
true
be.
super fan right here. The lights send things don't go so bad that changes.
I think the confusion is what the that is referring to, right? So the that is just referring back to as you said, that the guard standing for the queen.
Yeah,
He doesn't want that to
absolutely. The
change,
lights
right?
send things don't go so bad that changes. Yeah,
Well,
got
it's a reference to another sentence by itself. Anyway, but I am in support of more T-shirts with Wheel of Time sayings. I think there's nothing wrong with that idea.
All right, storytime part 2.
Mm,
Storytime the return. Here's what
best story time.
I'm not getting about this that I feel like I need more.
Oh, wait, you might be talking about a different one than I am. Yeah, go for it. Which one?
Well, we meet our friend what's his name? Lolil or something?
I always thought of him as Lowell,
Lolil?
or Lowell.
Oh, these are
Like
all vowels. That's a
now,
lot of vowels.
now I
Lol.
know, I know. I was just
Oh
thought it as Lowell,
man. All
but
right.
now you have to look it up,
All
man.
right. Here we
Now that we're looking
go.
stuff up,
Here we go.
and is he
Ba-ba-ba.
there? Oh, is he not there?
Is he not
What?
there for real?
That's amazing. I don't have him in mind now.
Whoa.
You just got to roll with it. So Lowell, Lowell,
Whoa,
Lowell, Lowell.
that's wild he's not in there. All right. Okay,
Wally.
but what? So I need to look something else up here. Wait, they're
Look
not
it
in
up.
here either? The
Which one?
O girl?
Ogier.
Yeah.
The Ogier. The Ogier aren't in there.
One power is the O entry.
Let me double check.
What? This is so random. How did he
Yep.
choose?
You got nothing. There's not. It's not there. Ogier. Maybe he didn't want
So
spoilers.
weird.
No, but Ogier just talked about, so I don't know why that would be true. I'm sure the Steading is in there.
Okay,
But I
let's
mean,
look
there's
out.
so
Yeah, because
much.
I was
So
confused
many
about
things.
that too. But these are the
Yeah.
things that I was like legit confused about, where other things I was what? Studying. Okay.
Oh, Ogier are pronounced underneath Steading.
Ogier. Ogier
Yeah,
home
if you
life.
go to Steading, it's
Many
Ogier. Yeah.
Steading have been abandoned since the break of the world. They are
Yeah.
portrayed in story and legend as havens, and with reason. They are shielded in some way, no longer understood, so that within them no eyes that I can channel the one power, nor sense that the true source exists. Attempts to wield the one power from outside a steading have no effect inside a steading boundary. No chalk will enter a steading unless driven. Even a mere draw will do so only at the greatest need, and then with the greatest reluctance, distaste, even dark friends, if truly dedicated, feel uncomfortable. All right. So
Boom.
Ogier,
Yep.
what do so I guess now I kind of know what Ogier look like, but like not really. And I
Hmm.
found it really strange. Oh wait, that was the wrong chapter. Found it really strange not to like describe that guy more.
Oh,
Because
really?
like at the very beginning, he's like he thinks it's a Trolloc, right? Because he's so big.
Right.
But
Right.
then and he's also still described as furry.
Right.
And I was like, oh, are Ogier just Trollocs? Ears tucked out to points.
Hmm.
Trolloc. Like, he sees them pretty clearly. Eyebrows that hung down like tails, framing pale eyes as big as teacups, ears that poked out with tough points through a shaggy black mane. Trolloc.
Hmm.
And so, like, I'm like, okay, are some Trollocs good? Are some Trollocs really
Narg
nice,
2.0.
slow, yeah, exactly, sloth like beings
These are the sloth.
who
These
take
are the
forever.
sloth Trolloc.
Yeah, the sloth trolloc. That's what these guys are, because they're
We could look
super
at the
slow. They take 100 years to do anything.
the clan of the sloth Trolloc. I love
Yeah,
it.
right. But then, like, so then I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, is this guy like a nice Trolloc? Is that what a an
Mm,
Ogier is?
right.
But like, I feel like no, that's not correct. But
Mhm.
I mean, I've seen them, but I don't. And other people in the town called him Trolloc. So
Right,
like,
right.
it are they related to Trollocs? This is where like I feel like sometimes he's so descriptive and we're going so deep in the world, and then other times where I'm like, man, some basic information I feel confused about and that I don't understand.
Well, right now Rand is asking himself, like, he didn't know what Lowell was, so we don't find out until
But he
like the
knows what
next part.
Ogier is, right?
Well, yeah, but he's never seen one. So yeah, it's in the very next part that he ends up figuring it out. Um, what he is, because the steading thing is brought
Right.
up. Where is it? Ogier,
I mean, he seems
twitching
pretty comfortable with them
ears.
pretty quick. I realize the guy, like, is real polite and all, but it's like he said, like, a couple sentences to him and he's shaking his hand.
Yeah, it says you're an Ogier. There it is. So it says
Yeah.
steading. Yeah. So it's on the very like next page that Rand figures it out. But yeah, I mean, he's being super polite. He's in and in. He's talking to him reasonably. He's just huge and kind of hairy.
Hmm.
But you're saying you wanted more descriptions of exactly how Loyal looks different than like a
Yeah,
Trolloc.
because to me, he just was a big Trolloc. And, like, I didn't
Mm.
understand if there is a difference in look, what exactly the difference in look is. Um,
Okay. Okay.
and like and also like if Rand knows what Ogier are, I just don't know what Ogier are, and it would be nice to like be in a little bit more of what Rand knows. I get to know as well if I'm supposed to be in his head, like he knows.
Mm.
I don't know. He seems wait 6 generations. You said War of 100 years.
Mm.
Yeah, no, this is going over my head. I don't know what they're talking about, and like I, at times, then we just get it. We I don't know this story time. I was like, I don't get this
This is the
story
greatest
time at all.
part of the book
This is the
right
greatest
here.
part of the book right here. Oy,
Right here. Well,
oy.
the greatest part of what I think Jordan does, which is creating other cultures and philosophies. But to your point of the difference between why would Rand confuse, it's tricky because Trollocs are like mixtures of different animals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're bigger than people,
Mm-hmm.
so they could have lots of different mixtures in it. It seems like there's different ways. It seems like most all Trollocs we see do have the heads of beasts, classically,
Mm-hmm.
right? But sometimes it's just like, their teeth are bigger that. And it is true, we sort of get general descriptions of them. Like we'll talk about, the head of a wolf or the beak of an eagle,
Mm-hmm.
like stuff like that, or like pawed feet. So we sort of get the impression of animalistic Trollocs.
Mm-hmm.
And then for Ogier, he saw this sort of like shaggy head that was huge. And so he was like, Trolloc, you know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, if they had him sort of step back and be like, but wait, he's actually got basically a human
Yeah,
face with
that's
like
what
a
I'm
bigger
saying. Like
nose. You know what I'm
after
saying? Like,
after he
yeah,
exclaims Trolloc, maybe like,
right,
oh
right,
wait, no, not a Trolloc, something different. Like that.
right,
That's
right.
it. That's all
Yeah,
you gotta do to
right,
make me a little more grounded in what's going on. Because I spent like this whole page going, oh, they're nice Trollocs. That's cool.
right, right,
And
right.
then I'm
Yeah,
like,
no, I
oh
know.
wait, no, they're not nice Trollocs. So this other thing, which I have heard
Yeah,
before, I've heard them
right.
talked about, but I never heard them talked about as like beast men. And I'm trying to
Right.
think about
As like
like
being
when
furry.
else we talked about them. And for some reason I'm mixing them up in my mind
Mm.
with that troop of women that got like wrecked. But that wasn't Ogier?
Oh, no, so yeah, you're thinking about the Aiel in the
Oh
Aiel
god, the
Waste. They got
IEO.
wrecked.
Okay.
Yeah, they got wrecked and then they told the Tinkers because
Right,
they had
right,
just fought
right, right.
Trollocs, right?
Aiel. Okay.
Yeah.
Ogre
Hmm. Hmm.
Aiel.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so we've heard about, yeah, I mean, yeah, because we've heard about these groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here, yeah, we see, oh, it's a person that's bigger, and that's what an Ogier is, basically.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's no fun to be confused. I definitely hear you on that because then you don't get to appreciate the story as it's happening. You're more trying to clawing to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And especially if that's not intentional, then then who knows when it's going to get answered, right? I
Right,
mean, if
right.
someone's purposely holding information away from you, they will then eventually provide that information or do something else that makes the story enjoyable,
Mm-hmm.
or at least intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I hear that. I hear that. There could have been a moment to like what are the things that make him not a Trolloc? Like, oh, obviously,
Right.
Trollocs all have beast faces. He doesn't. I just saw the top of his head and his twitchy ear and his like furry ears,
Mm-hmm.
and so I
Mm-hmm.
thought, but unlike Trolloc, he's got
Right.
the face of a
Right.
human beyond that, right? So yeah, just like something that would have created that divide. I mean, here it
Oh,
is
does
more
he have a face
implied.
of a human? Is that so? That's what these guys are like. They're like kind of a mane, but they're like
Yeah, it's more just
a
like
human
he
face.
has tufted. The main thing is they
He
have
has
tufted
more
ears.
snout than nose, though.
Yeah, yeah, and it is a much bigger nose. Yeah.
Hmm.
Because they've got like super broad faces.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm
And
sure
then their
I'll see
eyebrows
when
are
I
really
look
long.
for the
You,
screenshot for this
right.
video. Then I'll know exactly.
Exactly. Exactly. We're gonna find out sooner rather than later how they decide to do that. But yeah, I mean they are humanoids.
Mm-hmm.
They're just like really big humans,
Okay.
basically. Very wide humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so yeah, no, I mean I do hear that. Like Rand could have thought, like, why would I have thought as a child? It's tricky because we're also in a place in the world where people don't even necessarily believe Trollocs exist.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's like you got two different things quasi from myth because Trollocs don't are from the Blight, which is so far north that
Mm-hmm.
people this far south think they're all gone or just a legend these days, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then they see something as big as Ogier, and Ogier stay in their steadings and they don't come into towns, so they're not seen very often either. So it's like, oh, we know Trollocs are big and hairy. This thing's big and hairy. It's a Trolloc, right? And so that's why the people chased him and all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Um,
And so
but
and
yeah,
and so Jordan's just playing with the word ogre, basically.
yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that. Like a lot of the names are plays on like Arthurian legends and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. Even I was reading like Aes Sedai's,
So Trolloc is
like a
just a
Celtic
troll,
fairy. Exactly.
and
Right.
Ogier is just an ogre,
Yeah, he's
and
taking like familiar words and like changing them,
mm-hmm.
So they've got that. We talked before about kind of the feel of a world and a feel of a word and what it can evoke.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what he was kind of going for. I mean, he's got plenty that he just totally makes up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. But I hear what you're saying about being confused and just having a moment of comparison could have added some clarity for sure. And that can feel strange, especially for you as a reader, where it feels like you're getting more clarity than you want about
Right.
a lot of other things,
Right.
a lot of details, I should
Right.
say. Um, it's interesting though, because to
He
me,
seems almost more into this history than the present
hmm,
moment. I feel like he seems to assume you're as clear on the present moment as he is, and like what he really wants to write about is this backstory, baby. Like he wants to just like
hmm,
have a big giant ogre dude sit down and just unload
oh
on
yeah,
this
that's exactly what
backstory.
happens.
And I don't know, man. That's it's not my bag. Exposition. This is just like exposition central, and it's just like I mean, I like this dude. I like this character.
Right.
Like I like his personality. He's like super chill. Like I dig him,
Yeah.
but like man, half the stories that grown up with just been turned on their heads. I can't even really feel this because I don't even really understand what was turned on its head or like why that
Mm.
mattered. Like I didn't
Right.
know the
Right.
ogre believe in the pattern. Well, what? Who? What do they do or not? What? That's it doesn't seem like this amazing revelation. And man, I don't know, man.
So yeah, no, as we talked about before, I think this is what I don't want to say is gate kept fantasy, but what's created division because this is much more in the I mean, so I got to go back and read Lord of the Rings to check, because obviously Lord of the Rings is smaller, more condensed, right?
Hmm.
But this is in the style of that, of like building full worlds and then learning about those worlds, right? Like
Hmm.
it's not just that, oh, I walked into a fully realized fantasy world and now we're just doing things.
Hmm.
No, no. We are in that fantasy world, and people are going to talk about like the nature of their
Yes.
fantasy world, right? Um, which to me is, like I said, like this to me, like, so I think this is a perfect example. This you were totally bored by, disconnected from, right?
Hmm.
And this is like I could bathe in this all
Hmm.
day.
Yeah.
Like this is why I love Robert Jordan, because to me we get this sense of another culture that exists, and seeing these cultures kind of coming together, and this very different viewpoint from a group of people that are longer lived and interested in history and know the names of places that they used to be. It
Hmm.
all continues to dig out the depth of the world and make it feel lived in. And yeah, I've been thinking back to it, obviously with Wheel of Time coming out soon, and what it's like, because when I think back, I don't necessarily think of all those moments of history. I do think of the action that does happen in the
Hmm.
story. There
Hmm.
is there is some action within 14 novels that are this long, but it's all set in this, rich backdrop. Um, and of course, this is going to be a lot of the stuff they cut. Like we're not going to get this whole speech
Right.
in the show. Like it's not going to happen, right? But the hope was that,
Will we
at least the hope
even
I have,
get
is
this
that they can
scene?
retain some of this. Oh,
Will we even
Steve,
get this
don't
scene?
hurt me.
Well, I
Steve,
mean,
why?
like, I don't know how important this dude
It,
was. I mean, I like this
right,
dude. Matt's
sure.
frankly kind of a drag at this point. So when this dude was like, "I'm coming with you," I'm like, "Oh, that's
Right,
cool. I like this guy a lot more than
right,
Matt
right,
now." But then Rand was
right.
like, "No, he's too big and conspicuous." I don't know if that means he won't come along. It feels
Sure.
weird for him to kind of write that and then be like, oh,
Hmm.
he's not going to come along. But I don't know. There have been other characters on this journey that have just entered and exited immediately.
Right.
Oh, and let's talk about, like, again, the girl. This is, at this point, like, come on, it's
Hmm.
just happening every single time that the
Oh, the giggle.
whatever
Yeah.
girl he happens to run into is.
Dude, this is Randall Thorio.
But then also, then he said the parent thing again, and I'm like, stop
Yep.
beating this drum. We get it. We get it. They both think the other one is good with girls. I get it.
So adorable though, Steve. Why
Mm,
would you not want to hear it
all
again?
right. All right.
But to your point, so interesting. Yeah, I feel like it's inevitable that we'll talk about show stuff with it coming soon.
Mm,
I in through the correspondences of talking to people on YouTube from their comments, which has been great to see. Some people were talking about that Camelin might not even be in this season,
oh,
so like
right,
we wouldn't
right.
even get to hear.
How is that
Maybe
possible, though, if Logain breaking out was in
I've
the.
I've I have no idea.
That doesn't
So
make
at
sense.
one, Lowell is cast, like he's on the casting list.
Okay,
So
okay, okay.
and again, I mean, so I do think that we'll have this scene
Mm,
to some degree. But yeah, I think it will be real limited. I just hope that they can show, this difference in culture. And obviously it could be argued that stories written today, I feel like wouldn't do this. I feel like you'd meet Lowell and it would be like a hint of that he's got this side to him, right? Um, but I don't know. It's just so great how long-winded he is. Now, obviously, the long-windedness makes you put the book down. It's not working. But back to my previous point, I feel like this is what some people deeply want from fantasy, and this is also why some people are like, forget this. I'm reading a story where we're just in a fantasy
mm.
world and action and stuff is happening.
Well,
You know what I
just
mean?
talking about principles of writing and storytelling, like to kind of go
Sure,
back
sure.
to like my grad program, this sort of
Hmm.
summary was like just very, very discouraged. Um, and like not just that like summary was discouraged. I mean the idea behind it is that you don't want your whole story in summary. People want to be in scenes. They want
Hmm.
action to be happening. And when you say action in a literary sense, I mean you're not. I'm not talking about gunfights, but you're talking about like
Right.
characters doing something, actually making a choice, something having
Mm-hmm.
consequences, etc. And that like another thing that they often talked about is, you know, varying up what you're doing. So if you're going to have some summary, breaking it up with some dialogue, breaking it up with like, you know, some action, not having like kind of being in all one mode for too
Mm-hmm.
long a time. Because if you're just writing in this one mode for really long, naturally it's going to be boring to the reader. It's going to bring the reader down because you're not varying up the style that you're giving. And so like that's I think that's maybe not just like me non-fantasy lover sort of thing. It's like a legit thing that you got to kind of watch out for and is going to make people who aren't in it just for this really have trouble with it.
Yeah, and it could be the number of stories that we were getting because we were learning like past about um, Tom, and then we've got Lowell like talking about that. To me, both seem justified because the connection Master Gill has with these bullies is through Tom and talking about, you know, a mutual acquaintance or friend, very common when two people come together. Plus, it helps with the Elida choice. And then this, Lowell is like a historian. And there's also people that do just like kind of rattle off, like, here's what I've been trying to do and it hasn't been going well. He's kind of like bemoaning his trip, like not going the way he was hoping it to, right? And how he's kind of nervous to be gone because he's not supposed to be. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's an enjoyment thing, right? And I think what you're saying is certainly going to lead toward greater enjoyment for more people, right? Like I think you're going to capture more people with variation, so on and so forth. However, I do think there is something to be said about longevity and a book standing out. You know, who's to say exactly which aspect of it is, you know, of Wheel of Time that has made it stand the test of time and still be recommended and still be popular and still be loved and all that. And I do think personally, at least for me, a huge part of it is the nature of the cultures and the philosophies and getting to see people with clearly different belief systems and different approaches in the way they view the world as being incredible. And a scene like this makes me completely be like, okay, I'm going to read everything that's going to happen. Now, could he eventually bore me? Sure, of course. But, you know, we're looking at, you know, a handful of pages sort of talking about it. Again, more than you would see in most other narratives for sure. But I do wonder, you know, when we talk about this is generally what's going to work, but then it can be the exceptions that are the, you know, most loved books.
Yeah, this feels like the stuff that you put in your notebook and then you don't put in the story. like
I would be so
I
sad.
imagine
I'd be
like
sad forever.
walls of, you know, those little like what were the notebooks in school? What did we
Oh, the
call
like
those?
black and white.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what were
the
those called? I can't remember.
oh,
But
I've like got one. I've got one right beside me. What were
oh, I'm
actually
sure
here a
it's
minute.
filled with all sorts of magic system nonsense. The one that you have
The
next to
mead,
it.
the mead composition book.
Composition
Yeah, wait a minute.
notebooks. Yeah, composition
Yep,
notebooks.
yep. Oh yeah, I
Um,
got one I got two beside me that are full.
yeah, I know.
Yep.
I believe it. I
I,
believe it,
I
man.
mean, actually, I've got a million notebooks beside me that are full, but we're like a dozen actually, not a million.
But
But yeah,
imagine how much
that's huge.
Robert has. But Robert's like, I'm putting
Oh
it
my,
all in, baby. It's all
oh,
good.
oh, so it makes it so good. It makes it so good.
All right.
But this is the divide. I mean, what a better chapter for us to experience as clearly different readers in this regard, right?
No.
Just like look, I mean, we couldn't be more opposite in our reactions to this. I mean, I guess you could hate it even more than just being bored, right? Versus my love. But I feel like we're pretty polarized on this, and
Yeah.
that's pretty amazing to get to talk about.
It's interesting. It's very
Yeah,
interesting. It makes me wonder if there's like this divide. Had we talked about this? There's
yeah, that's
also maybe like overload too. Like
sure,
I
sure,
can't keep track of all this. I thought I couldn't keep track of Aiel versus Ogre.
right.
Like I remember this thing about somebody cut down a tree somewhere in some battle
Mhm.
that had something to do with
Yeah,
Tam, and that was a bad scene. I guess it's like
right.
one of these trees. I
Mm.
feel like I kind of remember this word, but like it's not. There's no previously on going on here, and I don't like buy that. Like if we were reading this faster, I would remember. I do not think I would remember. Like I don't remember this. I can go to the glossary, I guess, but like,
Yeah, it is there. It is in the glossary. You talked about it. I think that's part of the rereadability of these is
hmm,
that I think there is an expectation that yeah, you're not going to remember everything in the beginning because it is like you're being plopped down in this fantasy world, and there are some things that Rand doesn't understand, that doesn't know about, and there are other things that he does remember, and that we as readers may not remember. And so I think when you got what like a mystery, right, that you might reread again to see what were all the hints before they happened, right? I feel like for this sort of very fleshed out world fantasy book, you reread again. So this time you do know what Ogier are and you do know what Evan Desora is and so on and so forth. And then that'll let you appreciate the story in a new way because you're more knowledgeable about the world at that point.
hmm.
Now, obviously, if you don't have a desire to do that, then it's just going to be frustrating that you feel like you're getting too much information to remember all of. But I do think that's sort of a partial expectation.
Saran's and Aiel. This is what I'm getting
That's
from
definitely
this.
that's definitely with all things. Yeah,
I trust Lol. He seems like a smart guy. I think he
it does,
probably he
right?
probably hit the nail on the head right
Dude's
there.
90
Yeah, it's 90. That's old. All right.
or something
This
like
whole
that. He was close to
pattern
that.
thing I find is hilarious. Okay, it's
Oh,
not fixed. It is. Moraine likes to say, well, we got no choice. It's the pattern. But then it's like, no, the pattern can change.
hmm
If a man tries to change the direction of his life and the pattern has room for it, then it'll do it. This now feels like a very weak determinism. Now at this point where it's like, okay, sometimes there's just stuff, there's nothing you can do about it, but then there are times when there's something that you can do about it. You
Well,
understand?
they kind of saying
No,
like you can
lol.
make small changes to fate, right? And also this is Lowell saying his belief system,
Mm.
relating to the pattern. We don't know if that's just true or if that's just what they think. But again, I can understand how that could be confusing for non-fantasy readers that are like, I'm just supposed to take this as true, and it could be, um, but that's another element to consider.
I trust the loyal. And then like when he says if I wanted to be king though, and then Loyal gives like a crazy laugh. I feel like Loyal knows what's going on here
Oh yeah.
with Rand, and yeah, he's
I think he just wants to see a very fine grove in
a
Tarval.
very fine grove. Yeah, well, he's into those trees. What's going on with the cook, man? This is the other thing that's like
The side plot.
constantly brought up. This cook gets brought up like
Mhm.
four
Oh
times
yeah.
during the thing. So
Yep.
again, there's I don't know, whatever. We'll find out. There's something going on with that cook.
Here's the guy, but the Steve writes the show version of this. It contains 3 chapters worth of information. Uh,
I mean, but yeah, I will be interested in what decisions they make. It's like your what you love is gonna crash headlong into television audience in like an
yes, it
utter
is.
explosion, and I just don't. You already got okay. So our most watched video is that thing, and that trailer that we did, and that was like my favorite because I was like, finally, people are mad at Jeff. People have been mad at me this whole time, and now
But really, they should have been mad at me.
you got more pushback in one video than like all of our videos combined. It was beautiful. It was
True,
beautiful.
true. Thankfully, all my arguments are very well reasoned, so I stand by all of them. Don't get me wrong. Actually, some people pointed out some good things that I had missed or I misstated. What I greatly appreciate it's been super fun to me to talk with you. I was even still talking with people today
Oh,
about that
really?
video. Yeah,
Right on.
no, straight up. Like it's been fun to hear people's thoughts. But yeah, what I'm worried about is the laziness of Hollywood and the pandering, which I think is might be inevitable with this, which makes me sad. But it doesn't need to be like. it could do both. Like it could nod toward this deep culture while still mainly just being the Cliff Notes version of this book, you know?
Mhm.
So, they could do it right. I'm not expecting, this whole scene, right? Like, yes, I'm gushing about this scene, but that's also the joy of getting to watch a show and then read the book. That's the beauty of reading a book after seeing a show or before a show. You get more details, right? But those concepts, or those character traits or those world building elements, especially those that directly apply to the story, should still be hinted at in the show.
I would like a
Um,
little bit more nodding in the book. Why can't there be a little bit more nodding? I would like
that's what Game of Thrones did,
let's do
especially
some
with like
nods.
that's what Game of Thrones did with like Renly. For instance, Game of Thrones nodded toward Renly being gay, right? Whereas in the show just fully showed it. So that was an interesting case of flipping it on its head.
Mhm.
Um, and I do I feel like this is gonna go so Game of Thrones. I feel like they're just gonna be like, what can we do to make this like Game of Thrones? And as you've said before, it is not built for that. It's not the sexy POV jumping hot mess of excitement and death that that is Game of Thrones book one, which I love. I love book one. Don't get me wrong. Game of Thrones book one is amazing. Um, and I thought season one of Game of Thrones was quite good as well.
Mhm.
So I understand their desire to do that, but I feel like if they try to fit it, it's just going to be rough. So final thing, bets on the table.
Mm.
How much of this scene will be in it? We think 2 minutes, 1 minute, 0 minutes. Like,
I mean, I guess if this guy's a major character, they have to meet. I wouldn't be surprised if they even meet in just like completely separate circumstance. I don't know.
okay,
This journey
okay.
has been like really stretched out, and I don't see how
Mm,
the show can support this journey being this long
right.
without some other things happening, because there's just nothing happening, right? Like we're just going to
See
this
about the, we
place.
learned about the cook. The cook scene. The cook.
I just don't see it. So I mean, I'll put this bet down. Like I don't think the scene happens at all. I think maybe they meet him
Okay.
in a different way.
Yeah. And it could be, as is being hypothesized, that Camelin isn't in season one and like
Mm,
low casting in season two or something.
right.
There was also that news about Matt being recast. That just broke that but that's not really relevant. That's not what we're doing. This isn't
He's
this isn't
been
a TV
wait.
show
We
trailer.
we had
We
this
will do.
thing's filmed, right? What?
It is. He's been recast for season two though.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, wow, wow. But I'm just mentioning because breaking. But yeah, well, in terms of the book and our thoughts, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this is just not part there. I do wonder how on earth season one will possibly end
Mm-hmm.
if we're not even getting to Camlin, right? Because as you said, like if we were to just say what's happened in the book so far, yeah, it's been a lot of running. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like we've lost Tom. We're still running toward the goal. We haven't
Big
met up with
air
the rest of the
quotes
group.
around lost. Big air quotes.
But, in terms of those beats, do we really need any of those scenes? I mean, probably, maybe the lightning scene. But yeah, I think we'll go through it at the end. I will be sad to not get at least some of Lowell's history lesson, but time will tell.
Time.
Time will tell.
It will. All right, everybody. We are away from Rand next
We
chapter.
are
I'm
out.
seeing it now that we are. But now with Perrin's like the main story I care about, to be perfectly honest with you. But I
I
think if we're
know.
back with Moraine and company, they're headed towards Perrin. So thank goodness.
Right. We might actually get some action that relates to the biggest action we've got going on, right? I mean, because literally we left who's going to be executed,
Yeah.
right? How long ago was that? I mean, obviously a long time because, these recordings and readings we're doing are divided up. But even just in the book, like
Mm-hmm.
that is a ways away. That's a long time to carry that weight. But yeah, it seems like Nynaeve will likely get us back to that adventure. And I'll be really interested to see how you feel about these two chapters because we are doing two more, especially in comparison to what we just read. That would for you sounded like minor torture. So let's find out. I can't wait.
All right, everybody. See you then.
See ya.